Hiya, I'm Luna, and welcome to a bit of a new series I'm looking to create here. It is essentially going to delve into one topic, one long-form video. Still, I am hoping to make this more media, but it's looking more into memories. You see, I brought up in my Kinger video that my memory tends to be bad and spacey because I let the PTSD sort of, build all weird with the ADHD component as well. And, well, the reason I want to do this now is at an appointment while discussing doing a longer EEG for potential absent or partial seizures that we're looking into. He brought up the point that they could be psychological seizures, which I didn't even know was a thing. I mean, I have the complex regional pain syndrome. The constant pain is one thing. The spasms is another. But my abuse and whatnot is leading to freaking seizures? No, I should focus on making this right. So, of course, I'm going to still be focusing on the media component, which is why I chose Mr. Enter in this case. Someone I've been watching since forever, it feels like. And of course, in the long-form content, I intend to do it in one take, even if there are distractions, because what I learned from the BDSP versus Legends Arceus video, the distractions brought up some sort of memory that I ended up wanting to talk about. So in case they happen here, that's what I plan to do. Now, the focus is also not going to be on research or anything like that. I'm specifically going to be looking through my memories. What I remember, what I feel, because that way it's a sort of case study on memory in itself as well. That way you guys can leave comments on what you remember, on if I missed anything with my spacey sort of memory, and create a conversation on what memory actually is. Especially comparing it between me with this sort of jumpy memory while trying to make it into a single timeline compared to people with, like, different sorts of PTSD where they remember everything, or different sorts of, like, regular memory where they forgot things I remembered. So I plan to do this at least for a little bit, not just for your sake as an interesting sort of media, but for my sake, to hopefully help fix this all. So if you want more, be sure to comment below, let me know, comment your thoughts, your memories, and of course, subscribe. So to start with Mr. Enter, I had to have been watching him way back. I think it had to be the MLP days. And for the off chance that Mr. Enter ends up watching this, the MLP days I hardly remember them at all. I know that they're kind of cringe in your opinion nowadays, so know that I hardly remember them. However, what I do remember more is the sort of events and how they happened and how he is more of a doer rather than just sitting back. Firstly, there was the sort of controversy with the SpongeBob videos. He would specifically call out certain writers who he didn't think did a good job with certain episodes for this reason or another. This was let me remind you, this was back in a day where Twitter was just on the scene. These social medias were just popping up, and we just had this ability to link with big creators big people in Hollywood that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. And this is the first big controversy that I can think of where fans went after celebrities in this case, in terms of not just voice talent, but writers that were on Twitter and whatnot. To this day, he still brings it up from time to time and is like, okay, you do not go after people. Because he is essentially at this point the scapegoat for this, because he was one of the first people with a bigger platform, comparatively bigger at the time. But his fans were so fervent, like the ones we see today, that they were going after people to the point where these writers were getting a lot of hate for no real reason. Just because Mr. Enter was like, okay, write better. And that's one of the things I like about Mr. Enter. He saw this, he learned from this, and to this day, if he's calling out anyone, he emphasizes very, very hard, do not go after these people. Because at this point, a lot of the creators who are like, oh, don't go after anyone, haven't experienced their fans going after anyone by that point. Mr. Enter, he has. He is a scapegoat for it. And frankly, by the end of it, how he took those videos down, how he reacts to this day, I think was a good way to handle it. There could have been better ways, but considering the time frame and us just learning really what the implications of having these fan bases that can go after big people, yeah, no, I think he did a good job considering the times. And then moving forward, he started branching out more from specifically SpongeBob. He was originally known for his hate of certain SpongeBob episodes, because frankly, some of those episodes that he was talking about was bad. And when you get known for something, that's kind of the views around you, and also how you end up getting more views on your channel. Which is also another reason why even though I want personally to get more into the Pokemon fan base and do some of the Pokemon vids with people like Patters that I've been watching for years, I still want to talk about media in general and people like this, because there's still memories to root through. Now, moving forward in time, he saw a concept that was never picked up by Nickelodeon that switched the roles of adults and children. And he liked that idea so much that he ended up making a book for it. He was a Kickstarter. Was Kickstarter even around by that time? He tried to fund his book and idea through some way. He had put the price pretty high. No, like unreasonably high. And people still mock him to this day for that. And the book he put out, they still mock him for the spelling mistakes even on the back of the book. But you guys have to realize, this was really early to be making books. And a lot of the cartoon creators that were mocking him for it didn't make the books themselves. He found a concept he liked, he made a book, he actually did it. He did the thing. And even nowadays, how many people can you say really did that? Made a book, a concept, and rolled with it? Now, he, even to this day, admits some problems with it. Of course, he agrees that the price was a difficult point on that sort of crowdfunding campaign. He admits that there were some quality issues, including the back. And one interesting thing he's been bringing up nowadays is an issue with his co-creator on that book, how they sort of diverged, and how IP and property rights have just been difficult, even though this was a small property growing around. And honestly, that really just puts a little peek behind the curtain, because the big people don't have that sort of experience nowadays, or even from the start of their careers if they're going into the big Hollywood and whatnot, because those sectors have already built up what they need to do. They have people to do the legal portions, and with YouTubers and crowdfunding campaigns in general, these are just people. Remember that. This is just a person who had an idea, who had a semi-large platform. Even today, he has like 250k-ish views. So I have a video pulled up. I'm only gonna pull up videos for more recent events in these. But like, even today, it's enough for him to live. But it's not like the big millions channels like Markiplier became. But still, even back then, it was crazy for someone to do the thing, to make the book, to see a concept and go with it. And honestly, I respect him for it despite the issues. And even more recently, he's talked about another book he's making, as well as another book that I'm gonna get to a little bit later. But like, he's learning from everything. And then moving forward, there was, of course, he was throughout this timeline. I'm going to hold back some of the cartoon review aspects because that's just the baseline, you know? Moving forward, there was then a Technocracy series that he made that was really, really good. And I see a lot of praise for it nowadays. And this is coming from the perspective of someone who was in computer science education at that time, still learning. But even now, in hindsight, after finishing my master's, I think that was a really, really good tech series. With a lot of it holding up today, even if some aspects have changed, like how the algorithms sort of fit nowadays, as well as the AI prospects. And while we agree that this was all good, he has not made other videos like it. As he's pointed out, they didn't do as well view-wise, because he's known for the angry yelling at cartoons. And that's the difficult thing with making these sort of videos and getting known for something. Him being angry at cartoons is what he's known for. He actually tried to even pull back some of the animated atrocities and being angry for just trying to be positive, but he had to end up switching back to it. He hasn't talked specifically about why switching back to it was important recently, but I think it's the view counts again because of what he's known for. And also, of course, there's the negativity bias. Everyone has this bias towards negativity, which is why the airplanes nowadays and their crashes are becoming more and more in the public consciousness, along with the long time where specifically police cam footage with black people involved also got real big, despite there also being police footage with white people and whatnot. A lot of it respectful, especially after the black footage blew up. And just in general, true crime, the big focus on it nowadays. Because of all that, that just shows off our bias towards negativity rather than positive reviews. Hence, the direction he started to go back into. And then COVID happened from there. COVID itself was really rough on him. And, oh wait, Nicarama, that was actually a little bit before COVID, that's right. Nicarama, that's an important point to bring up. He tried to do a Nickelodeon looking through all of it through the entire month of December of videos. You know, December, increase ad revenue, whatnot. And well, Nicarama, he ended up having to stretch, I believe it was into March, because he just couldn't do it through the time frame he wanted to. I remember sitting before waiting for my final in my classical Japanese class, the last final I needed to take before my bachelor's was finished, watching one of the Nicarama videos. And well, it would have been more useful to have more of those videos for that time while I was waiting, trying to be less nervous. Because, you know, finals. But that becomes an important feature later. Now, back to the COVID. He really had a hard time with COVID. And then a little further than that, his mother passed away. Which just pulled him further and further down mentally. And well, his content around that time was, I think it was pretty sparse. I think he just couldn't really handle it all. And he talked about the COVID stuff. He had some interesting ideas around the time, especially talking about the vaccines, his thoughts on it. I remember it being interesting, but not really anything crazy because he was having such a hard time. But then he got back into the full swing of it. He started reviewing more with some negative bias here and there because that's what got him famous and that's what gets the views. And then Turning Red came out. He said something about how the context of it felt a bit weird because of the portion with 9/11. He was like, oh, 9/11 really was on people's minds. This is unrealistic. And well, people didn't like that. That became a very famous controversy because everyone thought it was a bad opinion. And yeah, even in his more modern videos, he talks about that opinion being, well, shit. Those are his words. And now, I mean, that's comparatively a smaller example, but it's another example of him looking at something and being like, oh, this was a bad opinion. Him actively saying something, saying, oh, this was actually really bad, I disagree with it now, and taking accountability for it. I mean, who else does that? Not very many people do that. And even to this day, he's still like, oh, that was shit. Now, of course, moving forward, he kept trying to get better with his content until he hit a certain point where he realized going into the important parts more and diving into even like the PTSD and trauma portion is more important. We start to see that like I'm trying to do right now. In fact, looking into the recent portion, the video, The Future of Me and My Channel, I have right here in front of me, is probably the most important video, even though it's more recent, into seeing Mr. Enter, who he is as a person, and everything else. And his openness here is, I think, very respectable. He is actively talking about this, which is something that not too many creators just go deep into. I mean, he has a more recent video where he talks about how when his mom died, that was the wrong parent to die. Going into his father, and I'm honestly going to link that below. I'm not going to go into it too deep because it isn't my place to go into. But with this video right here, there is not just the portion I'm about to show, but there's also a book portion talking about how he's making a book surrounding his thoughts, his trauma, in poem form. And I think that's a really good idea. It's more raw, more important to talk about. And kind of why I chose him to be the first person in this series. Because if he ends up watching this at all, I don't know how I would feel about him watching through it and discussing it. No, I think that would be a good thing if he sees this. If you are seeing this, hi, Mr. Enter. Know that your book, the trauma poems and writing all that down, is a really good idea. And if any of you want to know more about this book, see this video here, The Future of Me and My Channel, also linked below. But there's another factor from it that I think is important to emphasize, and I will play it full on.
Something that I think I've made known before, but I haven't said in quite some time, is that I personally suffer from seasonal affective disorder, also known as winter depression. And to tell you the blunt truth, it has been kicking my ass this year. I'm not entirely sure what's so different about this year compared to the last. I have a few theories, but in the past few years, I did become rather good at dealing with winter depression. What I found worked for me personally was to keep myself busy, just like constantly working on any kind of project. For what we say about Nick Orama, doing that project was invaluable to me personally, because it was the first year since my freshman year in high school that I really didn't feel the depression, because I was working on that constantly, filling every spare moment with something of that regard. And ever since then, October onward, every winter and fall, I've been trying to distract myself with work or whatever when winter came along. My theory, though, is that it's tougher this year because a lot is just catching up with me, mental health-wise. But before we go into that,
I think that quote right there is the most important thing to show off Mr. Enter's character as a person. He saw the Nick Orama, which I brought up because I needed to bring up and I remembered it. Instead of seeing it as a failed project because he couldn't do it in the December timeframe he wanted, he is looking back and seeing it as, oh wow, this really helped my seasonal affective disorder. And is looking to ways to implement that in future years, just help with the depression. And honestly, I don't get winter seasonal depression. I get a weird form of summer seasonal depression. It's why it's one of the main reasons I moved to Alaska rather than staying in Colorado. I just can't handle the summer, can't handle the heat. And if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen, so they speak. And that aside, this is honestly the thing I respect most about him. He analyzes his past videos, his past actions, his past ideas. He's willing to say when something is bad. He's willing to do what he thinks is a good idea. He's willing to make books. He's willing to put the videos out there. He's willing to put the opinions out there, even if they end up being crap. Because, frankly, if we don't have these opinions come out here that are outside the mainstream sort of bandwidth, so to speak, there's not points where you can see something and say, oh, that's actually a good idea. I never thought about that. But just as important as it is to put these videos out there, to put these opinions out there, and then take credit for them being crap in the future, it's also as important to acknowledge when something is crap. When maybe also when a opinion is good, but the pieces you arranged them in, or some of the considerations you made, were also crap. And maybe if you rework it, reorganize things, take out some of the crap, you'll have a better and really good opinion. And that's also why I say Mr. Enter is a really good doer. He sees something, he goes for it. He puts something out there. People will like it, people will dislike it. And just generally, I've seen that throughout his whole career. Most opinions he puts out there, he will leave out there. The only exception I can point out is the SpongeBob videos asking and really criticizing writers by name. Because frankly, if he didn't take those down, the writers would still be getting harassment. Frankly, they don't deserve that. So he's been narrowing the scope of what he can put out there, just to be ethical and whatnot. Like, he's been putting out there everything he thinks is reasonable and realizing, hey, this is good, hey, this is bad, hey, this crowdfunding campaign was a bad idea, I put it too high, maybe I should have lowered it. Hey, I made this book, I saw the idea, I didn't like this aspect or this aspect about the process. I'm planning to do this, this, and this with the people I've met along the way. And now he's starting to reflect on himself as a person. Talk about the PTSD. Talk about the trauma. And I respect him for going deep into it. Going into this video, and then the video about his father, because these things are important to put out there. Just in general, because sometimes putting things out there like this can do more for you than just keeping them in your head. And if someone is watching this who doesn't have a therapist, doesn't have a psych, but definitely has those PTSD, really, you need to go get a psych. You need to go get a therapist. You need to find someone that you can talk with, build out these ideas, and how you can really make yourself a better person. Because if you let yourself wallow in these feelings, wallow in the PTSD, just let it progress, well, you have me in my intro video where I tried to do this, and I was a spasmy mess. And just way too important. Because you can end up like me, with the chronic pain that doesn't go away. With the spasms that we're trying all these different medications. And finally something on a whim pulls them back. And then there's the memories that you have to not let get disorganized. Let them be built out. As otherwise, you risk the spasms. You risk the chronic pain. You risk the psychological seizures. And yes, that is a thing. And I think Mr. Enter hasn't talked about these sort of things. If he's experiencing them, he has definitely talked about the depression aspect. But if these sort of ideas don't get out there, if they don't get emphasized, there are so many people who are just going to be out there struggling, wondering why. Why is this complex regional pain syndrome here and what is it doing? Is there a way that it's going to go away? And if you don't talk about it, if you just let these things fester, they aren't going to go away. They're going to get worse. Even if you think, oh, it's better for me to just not talk about them because it's less painful, that's not right. It's less painful in the moment in terms of the brain, but it's going to let you know with physical symptoms, some of which you're going to dig and pay thousands and thousands to doctors for, just to be told, oh, this is functional, oh, this is psychosomatic. And I'm saying this from experience. So, like me, like Mr. Enter, do it. Put things out there. Because otherwise, even if you think it's terrible, you can't improve. You can't put them out there. And you're going to end up stuck like me going shrimp, quote unquote, throughout the whole of January. Just your core spasming and you're stuck in bed. And frankly, that's just the way the brain can work sometimes. As much as you think there must be something else, that's the brain. Well, anyway, if you thought this was interesting, please let me know your thoughts. Remember, this is an important thing. This is something you need to take seriously. And thus, if you leave a comment, leaving your thoughts, leaving your memories, and you read another comment that's like, oh, maybe not, don't be rude about it. This is a safe space. Or at least I hope it's gonna be a safe space. I'm gonna make it like that. Don't be a crap. Alright, let me know how I can improve this in the future. Maybe I could do it in a slightly different format, but the whole point is to put things out, give my memories, give my emotions, and then let you guys see if there was any gaps in there. That's just how I intend this to work. I hope you have a good day, though. And I hope you're doing the best for yourself. Like I'm trying to. Thank you.